Welcome to Countarts. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the Purchases Returns Journal. Now, we've done some lessons on the Purchases Journal, on the Sales Journal, and many other journals, the Cash Receipts Journal, the Cash Payments Journal, and those are some of the lessons that you can check out. If you understand some of the journals, it makes the other ones easier. And so if this is your first time looking at journals overall, you can look at this one or you can start with the other ones. But the more journals you look at, the more easier it becomes because you now know what goes where. But what goes into this journal? What do we record here? Well, this is a journal used to record the return of goods. And goods, the word might be used there, merchandise, stock, or inventory. And so those are the words that might be used in different books or in different materials or in different institutions. And so you just have to be mindful of that. When we're talking about goods, we're talking about merchandise, stock, or inventory. If you want to understand more on inventory, we've got a lesson specifically on that. You can find it in the link in the description below. But this is specifically the return of goods to the suppliers. And so you're returning goods that you have bought from them back for some reason, one reason or another, right? Popular or common reasons would be wrong goods have been delivered, or faulty goods have been delivered. Maybe they are damaged and you have to return it to the supplier, or maybe they supplied more than you needed and so you need to return it back. But the main reasons are usually faulty and incorrect goods delivered, and that's why you're returning them back to the supplier. And so when you have such a scenario, such a case, that is when you would have a record in the Purchases Returns Journal. However, there are a number of things, of course, you need to take note of. Okay, so as I've just mentioned, goods may be returned if they are faulty or incorrect or whatever the case may be. But when you return goods to the supplier, specifically when you've bought from that supplier on credit, that is when you'd record that entry in this journal. All right. With the periodic inventory system, now here's where you need to understand the periodic versus the perpetual inventory system, but we'll get to that just now. With the periodic inventory system, all purchases and purchases returns during the period are recorded in the purchases account, or the purchases returns can be shown in a separate purchases returns account. Okay. So what is a periodic inventory system? What is the perpetual inventory system? Well, the periodic inventory system is where you are recording the movement of inventory at specific periods or at specific points in time. And the perpetual means you're recording it continuously, which is the modern way of doing things because of technology. If you'd like to understand more on that, you'll find the link in the description below. But all that to say is that mainly you're using the periodic inventory system when you have to do the purchases returns journal. All purchases and purchase returns during the period are recorded in the purchases account, okay? Or the purchases returns can be shown in a separate purchase returns account. So if I go to my purchases returns journal, what I will see there is how much was returned back to the suppliers. The suppliers who mainly I bought from on credit, okay? But we'll look at it when we're going through the example shortly. The general ledger accounts for the cost of sales and inventory are adjusted only at the end of the period. Now, this is with periodic inventory system. With the periodic inventory system, you only make an adjustment to the cost of sales and inventory at the end of the period. Okay, you'll find those links in the description below, helpful in explaining this much closer. But if you're using the perpetual inventory system, of course, you will know at any point in time how much my inventory is and how much my cost of sales is. But with the periodic, only at the end of the period would you have that reconciliation or adjustment. Okay, so how does our purchases returns journal look like? Well, it's quite simple. You just need to know this is what it looks like, or this is the format, or this is the template. It might look slightly different from one place to another, but more or less the same. Okay, once you know what it looks like, you just need to know what do I record here, and that is what this lesson is for. We're gonna go through the examples just now. Now, once you have the template and you know what's recorded there, you're sorted. Okay, that's how easy journals actually are. If you have the template and you know what's supposed to go there, then you can easily account for it. So this is the template that we have here. The first thing that you have is the document number. Usually you'll be provided with this. In the scenario, you'll be told document number such and such. Otherwise, if you're not given document numbers, then you might just have to do it in sequence, 01, 02, 03, and so forth. Okay, and then the day, this is usually the day of the month. So you'd put the third day or 03 or 04. Because remember, the purchases journal will have a heading, all right? And the heading there would be the purchases returns journal for the month of May 2024. And so here you're just putting the date, day 5, day 6, and everyone would know it's May 2024, for instance. And the third column is for creditor. Who is the creditor to whom you are returning this goods, and this is why it's important to note that the purchases returns journal is mainly for goods that you bought on credit. What does it mean to buy on credit? It means that you bought from them and you'll only pay them at a later date or at a later point in time. Okay, you're not paying them cash when you're buying from them. And so what you're doing there is actually, when you're returning goods to them, you are reversing the entry. Basically, you are debiting the creditor, meaning that you no longer owe them, because remember, creditors are liabilities that are recorded on the credit side. And so now you're debiting it to reverse what you owe them, meaning you don't owe them anymore, and then you're crediting the purchases. Okay, so the creditor here would be the creditor's name. So if it's M&M Suppliers, you would put M&M Suppliers under creditors. Okay, and then the folio here, this is basically a cross reference where the amount relates to, and so that's what you would put there if you are required to do so. And then the purchases returns column here, you're basically putting the amount, okay, that the goods relate to. And so if I bought the goods that I'm returning for 1,000 Rand, I'll put the 1,000 Rand here, as well as the creditors control, I'm putting the 1,000 Rand here. What would that do? Basically, that would be decreasing my purchases, because I'm returning the goods. It's no longer under purchases, and it will also decrease the creditors control, or the creditors, the people that I owe money from whom I bought on credit, as I've just mentioned, because you're returning the goods to them, you no longer owe them that specific amount. Okay, I hope that's clear enough. So far, you know what the purchases returns journal is. What you record there, you're recording the returns of goods to suppliers from whom you bought on credit, and here you have a template of what needs to go there. So if you've understood this page here, let's go through a thorough example and seeing what we record in the purchases returns journal. Now remember, you may be asked to do the purchases returns journal, but you may be given more information than you need. And so you need to know what doesn't go into the purchases returns journal. And that is where understanding the other journals is also critical, but we will explain as we go along in this example. So let's look at the example here. We are asked to prepare the purchases returns journal for the following transactions. Now, these transactions happen from the 1st all the way to the 28th. Now, that does not mean that all these transactions go into the purchases returns journal. We have to know what goes there and what doesn't go there. So again, I'm going to say this. Only the goods that are returned to suppliers from whom we bought on credit will go into the purchases returns journal. Everything else probably goes somewhere else. Okay, and so it's good to know where those other things go, but I will mention where they go as we go along, and so we know it won't go into the purchases returns journal. Now here's my challenge to you. If you've not done the purchases returns journal before, or if you've done it and you just want to refresh your memory, pause the video here, attempt to plug in whatever goes into the purchases returns journal using the template that I alluded to in the previous slide, and attempt to complete all of them and scratch out whichever one does not go into the purchases returns journal, and maybe write a reason why it doesn't go into the purchases returns journal and which journal it perhaps goes into. I tell you, if you do that exercise before watching me giving you the answers, you'll be in a much better position than someone who's just following along and nodding yes, I get it. Okay, so I hope you've paused the video. I hope you've attempted it. Now let's do it together. Let's bring up our template once again. We've got it here, and now let's go to the information and do the transactions one at a time. So let's look at it on the 1st. Okay, here they didn't give us the month, but let's assume that it's October 2024. Okay, so it's the 1st of October, although we won't put the month in our journal, but we will put the day as I mentioned earlier. Okay, returned damaged goods worth 1,200 Rand to Z Suppliers, issued a debit note number 01. Okay, returned goods to Z Suppliers. Now I hope you attempted it. What do you think you would do with that one? Of course, that would go into our purchases returns journal. We returned damaged goods to a supplier, okay, and we issued a debit note. Now remember, if we are returning the goods, we are issuing the debit note, and then the supplier would issue us with what is called the credit note. If you want to understand more on this, you'll find the link in the description below with a lesson on debit notes versus credit notes. Okay, so we know this one here. So we know that this transaction on the 1st definitely goes into our purchases returns journal. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to put our number. Okay, we've got here debit note number 1, so we're going to put 01 as our number or document number, and then our day, it's day 01. Okay, and then the creditor here is Z Suppliers. Okay, and then we put the 1,200 Rand both under purchases returns and the creditors journal. So let's look at how that will look. Okay, you've got here the document number 01, as you saw, debit note number 01, so that's what we are putting. And remember, it might not go in sequence in your scenario or in your question, depending on how the examiner tests you, but you just need to put the document number that you're provided there. And then the day is day 01. The creditor is that suppliers. Again, we're putting the name of the supplier here. And then the 1,200 under purchases returns, and then 1,200 under creditors control. Alright, and the folio here that you might actually put is the purchases ledger, or PL. Okay, the purchases ledger is where you record transaction with each specific supplier. So that suppliers would have their own purchases ledger, and of course the amount would be reduced because of the return of the goods to them, the amount that we owe them, that is. Okay, by the way, one thing that I didn't mention, you'll find that actually we've not put the folio here for all of them, and so it might be the purchase ledger, it might also be the general ledger, so you can follow the format that you might be given in your scenario. All right, but in this case I'll put the purchases ledger, but the explanation there is that it's relating to the purchases ledger specifically for this specific supplier. Okay, because all suppliers would have their own purchases ledger. One thing to mention here that we didn't put is the name of the company. So if our company is Shiligo, for instance, we'd write Shiligo, and then we'd write purchases returns journal for October 2024, for instance. Okay, and you'll get that from the required. If they tell you to prepare the purchases returns journal for October 2024, you have to make sure you put your headings. Okay, the name of the company, and then under that you've got the name of the journal, purchases returns journal for October 2024, if that is the case. And then obviously the day here, everyone would know this relates to October. Okay, just take note of that. Okay, so this template here, we omitted the title or the name of the company, and the name of the journal, and the month for which we're preparing the journal, or the period for which we're preparing the journal. That's because in the example here we were not given the month or the name of the entity. Okay, but you just have to bear that in mind. Alright, let's look at the second one. We've already done the first one, so let's highlight that we have done that one. What about the transaction on the third? Again, I hope you've been attempting here and you highlighted that the first one does indeed go into the purchases returns journal. Let's look at the transaction on the third. Bought inventory from G Wholesalers for 4,500, paid by check 003. Now, I hope you attempted it, but I also hope that you didn't put this one here, because this is not a return to the suppliers. This is a purchase of inventory, or the buying of inventory from the supplier. Okay, so this does not go into the purchases returns journal. And by the way, it says paid by check, meaning we bought it for cash. What does that mean? Which journal would this one go into? Well, if you were doing all the journals and you were asked to do all the relevant journals, then you would put this one under the cash payments journal, because you're paying a supplier here. Then it would go into the cash payments journal. We've done a lesson specifically on the cash payments journal. You'll find the link in the description below. So we know this one does not go into the purchases returns journal. So here's a tip for you: whenever you see it written bought or purchased, you know automatically not a purchase return. So let's highlight that it doesn't go there. So we're highlighting in red all of them that do not go there. What about the fifth? Returned incorrect goods worth 700 Rand to G Wholesalers, issued debit note number 2. So obviously debit note number 2 there would be our document number, and then our day would be 05, our creditor would be G Wholesalers, and then our amount there would be 700 Rand. Okay, so let's do just that. It's easy here because we're told returned incorrect goods. Alright, so whether we returned damaged goods, incorrect goods, or oversupply of goods that we did not need, whatever the case is, as long as we return, we are reducing how much we owe our supplier, and in this case it's G Wholesalers. And so that's exactly how it's going to look. Document number, which we were given 02, and we made it easier here, which was made easier by giving it to us in sequence, so you already know what the answers are. Okay, but you have to think logically why it goes here or why it doesn't go here. And then the day is 05, the creditor, and the amount 700 Rand. Very easy to do. Okay, so let's highlight that one. What about the 8th? Purchased office supplies. Now, before I even continue reading, I know that doesn't go into our purchases returns journal because it's not a return, it's a purchase of office supplies. Okay, so the purchase of office supplies for 850 Rand on credit from Stationery World, by the way, and we're told that it's not inventory. These are office supplies. Remember, purchases returns journal is mainly for inventory. Even if that were the case, even if this was inventory, then it would still not go into our purchases returns journal because we are buying, we are purchasing. Okay, so sometimes you get thrown off by not paying attention to detail, because you see the word they purchased and you're doing a purchases returns journal, then you assume exactly it goes there. So you have to pay careful attention. It has to be a return to the supplier. Okay, so let's highlight that in red. doesn't go into our purchases returns journal. By the way, the one on the 8th, where does it go? Which journal would it go into? Well, that would go into the purchases journal. Okay, purchases journal, we're recording the purchase of inventory on credit. Okay, so if this were inventory, that is. So we've done a lesson specifically on the purchases journal as well. You'll find it in the link in the description below. Let's look at the 12th. Goods bought from B traders for 3,000 rand were returned due to being faulty. Issued debit note number 3. Again, obviously this one goes into our purchases returns journal. Our document number is 03, our day is 12, our creditor is B traders, and the amount is 3,000 rand. Very easy to do. I'm sure now you're getting the hang of it. You know what goes into the purchases journal. You know exactly what you need to record. Okay, so let's highlight that one. What about the 15th? Returned overcharged items worth 400 rand to F suppliers, issued debit note number 4. Again, this one goes into our purchases returns journal. We are overcharged for specific items, and so you have document number 04, the day is 15, the supplier or the creditor is F suppliers, and the amount is 400 rand, and you can see it's exactly the same way we've been doing the other one. So it's becoming easy as we go along. That's why I'm moving a bit quicker. Okay, and then we can highlight that one as being done. What about the 18th? Paid 2,500 rand to Y distributors for goods purchased earlier by check 004. Now, does this one go into the purchases returns journal? I hope it's a clear no, because we're not told we're returning anything to a supplier. What is happening, in fact, is that we're paying a supplier from whom we bought on credit. Okay, we bought goods from them on credit earlier, and now we are returning goods to them. Okay, so when we bought the goods on credit, of course, that's the purchases journal. But now that we are paying them, there is the cash payments journal. Whenever we pay money out, cash payments journal. Okay, I hope it's becoming easier here, and you're able to even know the other journals as we go along. You know what goes into which journal. So this one doesn't go into the purchases returns journal, so let's highlight this one. Okay, let's look at the 21st. Bought inventory from H suppliers for 7,800 rand on account. By now you should already be saying that doesn't go into the purchases returns journal, of course, because we're buying. No one is returning anything here. Right, so let's highlight that one as well. And then the 24th, returned 500 rand worth of goods to H suppliers for incorrect pricing, issued debit note number 05. So of course, when you see the word returned there, and we are the ones returning, remember there's a purchases returns journal that we are returning back to the supplier, not necessarily our customers returning back to us. That would be under the sales returns journal. So here we are going to record it. So the date, of course, is the 24th, and the number there, the document number is 05, the amount there is 500 rand, and of course the details there is H supplier. So let's do just that. We've recorded everything. Document number, day, H suppliers, 500 rand. So let's go back and highlight that one. And then finally, the 28th, goods purchased from M traders for 1,200 were of poor quality. Returned the goods and issued debit note number 06. Again, this one definitely goes into the purchases returns journal. We are returning back to the suppliers because the goods were faulty, or rather the goods were of poor quality. And so the date there is 28, document number 06, the detail there is M traders, and the amount is 1,200 rand. Remember, they don't always have to give you the reason for the return. They just have to tell you that we returned these goods here. Of course, they will usually supply the reason for the return, as was the case here. But if it's not given and you're told that you've returned the goods, you've issued a debit note, and they might not even say you've issued a debit note. They might say that the supplier issued you the credit note. Again, you can check out the lesson between the difference between debit note and credit note. But in a nutshell, debit note is what we issue to our supplier saying we're returning the goods back to you, and they acknowledge that by giving us a credit note, and that's what we will use for tax purposes as well. Okay, and so they might say that the supplier issued us with a credit note, which is still fine, because that would mean that they have acknowledged the return and they agree with it. Okay, because sometimes you return goods to the supplier and the supplier will dispute that. Maybe they're damaged, and the supplier would say, no, we provided this goods to you in good quality. And so that might occur, but I think that's outside the ambit of this lesson or topic, and so you won't be dealing with that, unlikely. Okay, so let's put in our detail here. The document number is 06, 28, M traders, 1,200 rand. So let's go back, highlight that one, and you can see we have done everything. Now, I hope at this point you're saying, I came to this lesson, I had no idea what the purchases returns journal is all about. but I can definitely do the purchases returns journal. If that is you, please let us know in the comment section below, so that we know that you have indeed understood what we've been going through here. But now that we are done, the only thing that we need to do is just go back and put our totals at the bottom here. So I'll go right there, and then you can see here I've already totaled it's 7,000 rand for purchases returns. Of course, it's going to be the same amount as the creditors control. Now, if you have this amount here, purchase returns, remember, if you're asked to do the income statement or the statement of comprehensive income or the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, different names for really the same thing. What you usually do when you're calculating the cost of sales, for instance, you take your opening balance of inventory plus your purchases minus purchase returns. What would that amount be? That should be this 7,000 rand. Okay, so you just have to bear in mind that you're not just doing this and that's the end of it. You have to think outside the box to say, why am I doing it, and what other accounts, what other statements does it affect? This affects your income statement. When you're calculating your cost of sales, like I said, opening inventory plus purchases minus purchase returns. This is that 7,000 rand that you're seeing here. Okay, and then of course you also deduct your closing inventory, and you will have your cost of sales. So if you see in the trial balance purchase returns, then it's referring to this exact amount, and this is how you get it, by doing the purchase returns journal and journaling everything that you have returned. Now, the only thing missing from our journal here is the name of the company and the name of the journal. So purchases returns journal for the year ended 31st of December 2024, for instance, for Shiligo Traders, for instance. That is what you have to put as your name. Remember, all journals must have the name. And so because the question didn't give us the name of the company for which we're doing this journal and the period for which we're doing the journal, then we didn't put it here. But you just have to take note of that. Okay, that's the only thing missing here. You put the name of the journal, purchases returns journal, for the period ended 31st of December 2024. If that's the case for you, you put in that, and then you put the name of the company as well. Otherwise, this is exactly how you do your purchases returns journal. Now, as I mentioned, if you've gained value from this lesson, if you've learned something, please consider subscribing to our channel, like this video, let us know in the comment section below. Till next time, cheers.